Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spiritual American. My name is Dr. Ann O'Hare, and I'm your host. And today we will be talking about emotional intelligence. I'm sure you've heard that before, that phrase, and we're going to talk about it and bring a little bit of a spiritual slant on it. But before we get started, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. As you know, that helps YouTube get this content out to more and more people. And of course, consider sharing this with your friends and family as well. So, emotional intelligence. When I was thinking about this episode, I was thinking about the emotions that we usually talk about or think about. So, happy, sad, angry, whatever those emotions are. And I'm going to kind of come from it in the moment kind of situation. I wrote that emotional intelligence means that you are aware of your own feelings and you're sensitive to the feelings of others. Now, when we talk about feelings, like we put names on them, like this is, I'm sad, or I'm feeling grief, or I'm feeling annoyed, or I'm feeling impatient, or whatever it is, we put words on it. But inside, there's no words. It's just feelings, right? Maybe I'm having thoughts, but I'm having a feeling like something's going on inside. So, emotional intelligence means that I'm really clear about what it is that I'm feeling, what it is that I need. And also, I'm clear about what others are feeling, maybe as much as I can tell, and what others need. What happens when we have let's say, a low emotional intelligence? We are not sensitive to our own needs or the needs of others. And maybe this is where we get into the hurting people's feelings, maybe being a little bit too abrupt, or maybe people might think I'm selfish, or I don't care about this or that, or this person or that person. When even inside, I may really care a lot, but externally, it's not showing. So I was thinking today that I would share my own experience with this. Growing up, and I've shared this before on the podcast, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and the emphasis was really on education and outward success. That was a big, that was the most important focus that we would have in life. There was very little to no focus, I'm going to say, on your authentic feelings, like your heart, what's going on inside you. It was more about what you were showing, not what you really feel. So growing up, and I kind of picked up this habit of paying attention to what everybody else was doing or saying and trying to adjust myself to help calm down the situation, or maybe make them like me or something like this. I kind of picked up this idea that if I act this way, it'll be better, or I'll make them feel better, or I'll be safe, or whatever. All these kind of reactive, hyper vigilant habits and behaviors that I picked up along the way. None of that is emotional intelligence. It's all reactivity. So emotional intelligence is not the same as reactivity. Okay. So let's say I kept going in my life. And then when I started this spiritual journey and started meditating, I realized, and I had to face, that I really didn't know myself very well, my internal world. I really wasn't very clear about what it was that I wanted. As a matter of fact, I was so used to doing what I thought other people wanted. I didn't even know what I needed or what I felt or anything like that. And I know that probably some of you out there are having the same background and maybe the same challenge. And some of you might be listening to this and saying, I don't know what she's talking about. Of course, I know what I feel. Of course. And some people are like that. I know people in my family and people in my life that don't have that problem. But for me, that's what it was. And I'm going to say that that was because I was sensitive, that when other people acted a certain way, and maybe I didn't have the language, or maybe I didn't understand, or whatever, I picked up these kind of reactive behaviors to deal with it. So when I started doing meditation and I started looking at myself and trying to figure out what was going on inside me, I had to start setting boundaries, meaning I had to start changing my behavior. So part of emotional intelligence is, I'm going to say, self care. And self care is a theme that you're going to hear on many of these episodes. And I feel strongly that meditation is the primary practice for self care because it's focusing on the self. I'm focusing on myself. In the beginning, when we start meditating, the mind is going crazy and all the PTSD and activity and negative self talk and everything is all there at first. And so sometimes it's a little scary, or maybe we get discouraged when we start to meditate at first. But I stuck it out and I kept meditating because I did understand, based on the knowledge that I was learning, that meditation, I had to start meditating. I had to start getting in touch with what's going on inside. So I've shared this before on the podcast, but 2 weeks after I started meditating, and believe me, my mind was crazy. 2 weeks after I started meditating, anger completely left. I noticed it. Like, I didn't feel angry, but what I noticed is that things were happening and I wasn't reacting. It just wasn't there anymore. It just disappeared. So I was noticing what was going on in myself. That's part of emotional intelligence. Start to notice how you respond. One of the practices that we do is before bed at night, we run the day in front of my mind's eye. Like in my mind, I run through the day and see how I did. Like, no judgment, because there's no judgment in spirituality. But I try to watch and see and look and learn. Okay, well, I did good there. Maybe I was a little selfish there. Wow, I did better in that situation. Or, wow, I used to be really angry when that happened and I wasn't angry. Or maybe need a little more self-control over there. So at the end of the day, I'm watching myself and I'm getting a sense of my own responses and my own progress. That's also emotional intelligence. I'm beginning to understand my own patterns, patterns of reaction, patterns of feelings, patterns of thinking, patterns of self respect or lack of self respect. Self respect is also very important because I find that when I feel insecure or I feel maybe confused or a little too overstimulated, that I don't really feel good about myself or my behavior at those times. So, for instance, maybe I'm in a meeting and everybody else is sitting there and I get really enthusiastic about something and I start talking about it and nobody reacts, or maybe there's a negative reaction or something like that. And I just feel really foolish. And I sit down and maybe I worry about it later or something, or maybe I get mad at them. There's all different ways to react. But what I notice is, after a situation like that, my feelings are, I don't want to feel foolish. So self-respect is very important. And part of self-care and self-respect and emotional intelligence is knowing when I need to take care of myself. And we were just doing another podcast episode a little while ago, and we were talking about setting boundaries. Like, if something is, we use the word toxic, and I'll define toxic. Toxic, a definition of toxic is when you're in a relationship with something, doesn't have to be people, but usually it's people, I guess, where the natural flow of ideas and giving and taking is stuck. It's not happening. So there's abuse there, or there's negativity there, or there's hard feelings, or something is there, but the natural back and forth of relationship is not there. So I would call that, or stuck, I would call that toxic. So if I have toxic situation, it would help me if I would be able to set a boundary and remove myself from that situation, at least temporarily. We had a class last night also where one of the students said, well, what do? I started doing, spiritual practice, and now my friends are making fun of me or they're being mean to me or whatever. And I get really upset inside and I don't know what to do. And so I suggested, in those moments, remove yourself from the environment, because it doesn't occur to us. Sometimes we think, "Oh, I should say, I don't like when you're saying that to me," or whatever, which is not wrong. But in spirituality, we're really looking at trying to transform my own internal landscape. And when I transform my own internal landscape by taking responsibility for my own feelings and dealing with myself and not everybody else, I'm not dealing with everybody else, I'm just dealing with me. When I do that, I begin to open up a little bit more. And then you'll see my experience is those relationships begin to transform. But I can't transform them when I'm being overwhelmed in the moment and I can't discern what's happening inside. So I need to give myself some room. So I told the person, just say, "Oh, excuse me, I really have to go now." That's all. Just get yourself out of there. So self care is very important for getting to know myself, giving myself some room in the situations where the emotions are running high. Maybe I don't have a full, clear idea of what's happening yet. I find that when I start doing that, I feel better. My self respect starts to feel better. I was thinking that someone has to be on my side. Can other people really help me? I mean, you can get help, but nobody really can make me feel better about me. Not really. They can be supportive. They can give you, advice or support or whatever, but nobody can make you feel better about yourself. I think that's a very important point of emotional intelligence. And you can check it for yourself, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a fact that no one can give me my own self respect. So, with emotional intelligence, we're talking about self care, we're talking about self respect, and that may include boundaries, boundary setting, meaning whatever the situation was, I'm stopping or I'm pulling away or I'm renegotiating the situation so that I don't have to feel inauthentic, so that I don't have to feel uncomfortable. It's important at those times that you don't do anything that makes the other people think that you're angry or upset. Maybe you are, and I'm not saying it might not be perfect. It might not be perfect at first, but ultimately, in a spiritual way, we want to be able to set that boundary in a neutral way. "Oh, you know what? I'm really busy at work right now. I can't talk right now." And then you're safe and you can continue to work on yourself. And I'm here to say, once you get that time to work on yourself and get that clarity, and we can say emotional intelligence, like get that idea of what's going on inside of me, you're much better able to be with others. And there's a secret, there's a magic secret. If you really do this without blaming anybody else, if you really take responsibility and give yourself a chance and meditate and find out what's going on, you will naturally start to change in a good way, like the more authentic and more self reliant, more self respect. And those energies have an impact on others. Self respect and self reliance and independence and caring and goodwill, they all have an impact on others. And when I start using that for myself, others begin to change. And that's the magic. So I don't have to change anybody. I can't change anybody, right? We know this. I can't really change anybody. However, can't really change myself either, not with force. Like I can't change myself. Anybody try to change yourself with force? Doesn't work, right? I don't want to be this way anymore. I don't want to be that anymore. No, that's just talk in my head. What I'm sharing now is what works is give yourself some time, do meditation, start paying attention to yourself, start paying attention to your thoughts and feelings, no judgment. Watch your day at night before you go to sleep. Get a sense of what's going on. Now, how is this going to translate into being sensitive to others? I'm going to say it's just like any other experience. So I'm a nurse. You know this if you've been watching the podcast. And I have experiences as a nurse. So if I go up to somebody who's a nurse, I automatically understand. And if they start talking about something about nursing, chances are I have no problem relating to them. It's easily recognizable. It's easy for me to relate, and I can respond in a positive way. Same thing with emotions. If I have emotions like hurt feelings, or maybe I'm sensitive, or maybe I feel insecure, or I'm in a toxic situation and I don't know how to take care of myself. If I start taking care of myself and if I start healing those feelings, that makes me experienced in that. So when I'm around other people who feel insecure, I'll be able to pick it up. I'll give an example. I was doing meditation in work and I was in my office, and at lunchtime we were doing meditation. There were maybe 4 people in my office and we were meditating. And right in the middle of the meditation, one of the clerks came in, didn't knock, nothing, came into the office and started complaining about how she was doing all this for the veteran. I work in the VA, and for the patient. And she called him and she did all this extra work and she's like yelling. And I'm watching her, and 2 things happened. One thing was I was aware that the students were watching me, the other nurses were watching me, so I had to hopefully have a good response. The second thing I realized is I don't know what to say, so I got very quiet. So inside, I'm going to say the power of silence. I just got very quiet and I just listened. And when I was listening, I realized what she needed. She needed to be validated. That wasn't in words. In words, she was yelling and talking with her hands and being loud and totally unaware that she was interrupting the class or whatever, or she didn't care. But I could have said, will you please leave? We're having the meditation. But I didn't do that. I got very quiet and I heard. It was like I felt what the person was needing. She needed to be validated. So I said, wow, you did such a great job with that patient. Thank you so much for doing that. I'm so glad you came in and told me that. That was amazing. Thank you so much for telling me that. And she goes, okay, thanks, bye. And she walked out. That's the magic. When I understand my own emotions, heal my own self apart from them, that's the law of karma. Remember, I'm 100% responsible. I got to deal with myself. That's the hardest step, by the way. Separating from the situation and focusing on myself, that first step is the hardest step. Once you do that, of course, you're going to want to get better, right? So I'm focusing on myself, and then I have experience. So then when other people have situations, number one, I'm not reacting. Number two, I probably have the answer. And hopefully I'll be able to deliver the answer in a way that feels natural and actually helps the person. Obviously, I'm not trying to be egoic or arrogant and hurting anybody, right? But wouldn't it be nice to be able to feel self-respect, feel secure inside so that when something happens, I'm able to give the right response to help and remain stable myself? That's emotional intelligence. So I'll leave it there. I wrote down here just the last 2 things. I wrote down here, you need courage to set boundaries and then back yourself up. So in the final analysis, I can't change anybody else. I can't really forcefully change myself. But if I pay attention to myself, I'll get experience, I'll heal, I'll empower myself, and then I can help others. So I will leave it there. Remember, our slogan is heal, empower, and serve. Just like I just said, I heal myself, I empower myself, and then I can serve others. So thank you for being here. And until next time, take care.